The Spanish flu of 1918 is undoubtedly one of the deadliest and the scariest pandemic in history, infecting an estimated 500 million people worldwide and killing an estimated 20 million to 50 million victims, including some 675,000 Americans. The 1918 flu was first observed in Europe, the United States and parts of Asia before swiftly spreading around the world. At the time, there were no effective drugs or vaccines to treat this killer flu strain. Citizens were ordered to wear masks, schools, theaters and businesses were shuttered, and bodies piled up in makeshift morgues before the virus ended its deadly global march. But behind this deadly virus is a story not known to many. So if you want to know all the historical details about the catastrophic and deadly Spanish flu, then keep on watching till the end of this video. Hey guys, and welcome back. In today's video, I will dive into the history of Spanish flu and how the world recovered. Let's get right into the video. What was the Spanish flu? It was a pandemic of influenza that struck in 3 waves. The first, mild wave in the northern hemisphere's spring of 1918 receded in the summer or late spring. A much more lethal second wave erupted in the latter part of August and receded towards the end of that year, and the third wave emerged in the early months of 1919. The outbreak began in 1918 during the final months of World War I. And historians now believe that the conflict may have been partly responsible for spreading the virus. On the Western Front, soldiers living in cramped, dirty and damp conditions became ill. This was a direct result of weakened immune systems from malnourishment. Their illnesses, which were known as la grippe, were infectious and spread among the ranks. Within around 3 days of becoming ill, many soldiers would start to feel better, but not all would make it. During the summer of 1918, as troops began to return home on leave, they brought with them the undetected virus that made them ill. The virus spread across cities, towns and villages in the soldiers' home countries. Many of those infected, both soldiers and civilians, did not recover rapidly. The virus was hardest on young adults between the ages of 20 to 30 who had been previously healthy. Why was it so deadly? Pandemic flu is much worse than seasonal flu. And we think there have been 15 flu pandemics in the past 500 years. Every seasonal flu started out as a pandemic flu, which was much more virulent because it was new in the human population. There are a lot of theories for why the Spanish flu was so virulent, and they are not mutually exclusive. Some of them have to do with the inherent biology of that virus, and some of them with the state of the world at the time. That pandemic obviously emerged when the world was at war. There were extraordinary circumstances. Lots of people were on the move, not only troops but also civilians, refugees and displaced persons. And there was a lot of hunger. All of these factors may have fed into the virulence of the virus. There was definitely something very abnormal about 1918. If you think about the 5 flu pandemics we've had since the 1890s, none of them had killed more than about 4 million people maximum, whereas the Spanish flu killed 50 million. Why is it called the Spanish flu? It's a historical accident and unjust, because we know for sure that it didn't start in Spain. We don't know where it started, but there were cases in at least the United States, Britain, France and probably in some other European countries before it was in Spain. But Spain was neutral in the war, so it didn't censor its press. And when the first cases broke out there, in the spring of 1918, the newspapers reported on them, whereas in the other countries, it was kept out of the news. Those first Spanish cases included Alfonso XIII, the King of Spain, which made it very visible. So that name kind of stuck, unfortunately, with the encouragement of the other warring nations who were quite happy to point the blame at somebody else. There's always this human instinct, unfortunately, to point the finger at another country and say it came from there. How did the Spanish flu change society 100 years ago? In the short term, there was a jump in life expectancy, because a lot of people who were very ill with it, for example TB, which was a massive killer at that time, were purged from the population. They were probably the first to die of Spanish flu because they were already in a weakened state. The people who were ill died and the people who were left behind were healthier. Among those very vulnerable to the Spanish flu were the 20 to 40-year-olds. Normally, flu is most dangerous to young children and to the very old, but in 1918, bizarrely, it was this middle-aged group. There wasn't much of a social welfare net, even in wealthy countries, so lots of dependents were left without any means of support because the breadwinners were taken out by the flu. Bodies piled up to such an extent that cemeteries were overwhelmed and families had to dig graves for their relatives. The deaths created a shortage of farm workers, which affected the late summer harvest. As in Britain, a lack of staff and resources put other services such as waste collection under pressure. The pandemic spread to Asia, Africa, South America, and South Pacific. In India, the mortality rate reached 50 deaths per 1,000 people, indeed a very shocking figure. How did the world recover? Over time, those who contracted the virus developed an immunity to the novel strand of influenza, and life returned to normal by the early 1920s, according to historians and medical experts. Reports at the time suggest the virus became less lethal as the pandemic carried on in waves, but the strand of the flu didn't disappear. The influenza virus continually mutated, passing through humans, pigs, and other mammals. The pandemic-level virus morphed into just another seasonal flu. The longer the influenza virus existed in a certain community, the less lethal the sickness was. An epidemiological study cited by Barry in The Great Influenza noted that the virus was most virulent or most readily communicable when it first reached the state, and thereafter it became generally attenuated. Experts say there's this natural progression where a virus often becomes less lethal as time wears on. It's in the best interest of the virus for it to spread before killing the host. So guys, that's it for today's video. I hope you liked it. What are your thoughts about the Spanish flu and its impacts? Tell us in the comments. Also, let us know what else you would want to see in the future. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you soon with the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.